Hi, my name is Benedict. This is going to be another review and discussion centered this time around the brand new TAL EQ. Now, I'm not actually here representing Higher Hertz. I don't believe they're really in business anymore, but I did review a lot of TAL product for Higher Hertz. So I'm quite familiar with his brand, his style, how he does things. TAL is a reputable developer. He's a small developer. He's never achieved the cachet of being Proful and this, that, and the other. And I think that's kind of a good thing because it allows him to sort of work underneath that part of the market. I think that he is, as I said, reputable, and as far as I'm aware, he seems to be honest, and as in his products seem to do what they say they're going to do, and they don't seem to be presented with a lot of hyperbole. Because that's one of the things we will end up discussing in here. And the reality is, I'm a mix engineer. I'm a composer, but as a mix engineer is why I do these things. And something that really, really has gotten my goat in the last 20 years is the amount of hyperbole that has overtaken the whole music, that what I refer to as Dorville. And so now it's run by hyperbole rather than what it should be about, which is art. So I'd like that TAL doesn't seem to engage in that kind of hyperbole. It has perhaps limited his business, but if that's a decision he's deliberately made, good on you, dude. It makes you a better man than most. Speaking of, the last video I did was a review of Relief EQ. I found some bugs which I did ultimately discover were probably more a Reason thing, but that doesn't mean that they're Reason's fault. I did present them. 5 days have gone past, haven't heard anything from the developer. This, of course, makes me sad because I put some time and energy into his product. That doesn't mean I'm owed anything, but at the same time, he doesn't seem to have acknowledged that it's happened, let alone that I have raised a reportable, a viewable bug. So it reduces my confidence and therefore interest in his product. So I'm passing that on to you, that if you think that you're going to set to sea with his product, I question whether he has that reliability that you need if there are going to be problems that are, well, ignored. There may be some perfectly good reason. Maybe he's been run over by 47 buses or something. I really don't know. But obviously, it's a little less than ideal where reported bugs go ignored for the best part of a week. Back to TAL. So we'll run through here because TAL does a nice job of presenting his product. It's about the product. Okay, he says it's all about the workflow, how it's intuitive and simple. Mostly is, I won't disagree. It's got dynamics. Dynamic EQ isn't the first thing that I go for, but if I were buying a new EQ, whether it was or wasn't dynamic would probably be a factor. Whether it would be the ultimate buying decision, I don't know, but it would be if it doesn't have it, that's a minus. So it does have it, and yep, seems to work. You've got the ability to process stereo, left or right, mid and side. None of those are a big deal for me, other than stereo, of course. But they are there and they don't really intrude. So that's a good thing. Sometimes they intrude. And then he's got this list of general features, what you can do. You can scale the UI up and down, make it bigger or smaller, and you can either just drag the corner and make the whole box, the window that you're looking at, bigger, but it leaves the knobs at the same size, or you can move the whole thing. He's got a slightly different way of doing things. TAL does some things slightly different way, makes them different, but ultimately he has a style. It works. Plugin version, bypass button, default button. Now this is interesting because I did have an issue we'll talk about later, and I worked out how to solve it because I just read this page. And that's a thing that I like, that this is enough for a competent user. That's the RTFM. There probably is an actual manual somewhere, but I'm not going to open it because I don't feel like I need to, and that's a really good thing. We have a project here, and it is in Reason. And one of the reasons that I feel, and I could be making this up, is that I didn't get a response from the Relief EQ guy, is because, well, I use Reason. I know that there is a certain anti-Reason user cringe out there, and that's just really it's fucked in the head, kids, when you do this kind of stuff that, well, it's not powerful enough. And it's like, well, you know what? It's just a tool. It's the tool that I feel comfortable using. If you feel more comfortable using a different kind of spanner, do I come looking at your spanner and going, oh, you're a wanker because you use that kind of spanner? No, you'd go, fuck off, Benedict, you're a wanker for raising that issue. But in Doorville, we've created some doors are cool and some doors are, well, they're used by posers or wannabes, or it's a toy. Yeah, some doors are more toy-like. My partner just got a new iPad, and her old iPad wouldn't run GarageBand, and the new one will run GarageBand. So for a little while, we poked at GarageBand, and honestly, compared to a on-screen computer door, it did feel like a toy. But if somebody's going to go ahead and make good music with it, couldn't give a flying banana peel. So if you're one of those people that's got an anti-reason cringe because it's not powerful enough, you're probably also going, oh, well, the room that you're working in isn't powerful enough, it doesn't have wall padding, the windows are open, you don't have purple walls or purple lighting or whatever other that you think makes profulness. Go now. Be offended, go somewhere else, because you offend life itself when you take that kind of tood. So, yes, I'm running TAL EQ. This is the demo, so it hisses. Nothing against that whatsoever. TAL has a right to protect himself from people using his product for free, but in terms of this kind of review, it makes it tricky. I've extracted a section of a piece that I just finished the writing yesterday, so it was like, oh, great timing, I'll try this to EQ. So, here's the piece as it was. And we'll swap. We hear a lot of hiss. Still hearing hiss. Lots of hiss. No hiss. And the hiss comes back. So it is a bit tricky to do an A-B with everything across the whole mix. So as you see here, I've got TAL EQs across the whole mix. So it's inevitable that there's going to be at least one of them hissing all the time. And it's also on that's not the button, the master here as well. So, yep, this is going to happen. Not a thing. We're just going to have to work with it. I was hoping to be able to show you, a detailed all the way through, but nobody ends up watching those things anyway, which is, I think, kind of sad, because that's where you really learn the important stuff. Nonetheless, that's a mix A-B. Go back over it if you like. I feel very comfortable that with a straight out of the box, throw it straight into action, that we get a nice sounding result. We will work through some features. So we'll first turn all of these off so they can't get in our way. And bye-bye. So now we can go to this one. Again, with that one, I never close this down except for doing shows. So this is the product in terms of EQ. So that's only showing the master curve. Bear in mind the master curve was done after I'd done all the other things. I'd turned all those other things off. As you can hear, it's hissing. That hiss is actually put in at the beginning of the process, so you will EQ the demo hiss. Again, no argument with that, and it makes it clear you're running a demo. Good on your TAL, protect your own investment. What we've got is a fairly standard sort of visual thing that you can grab all the stuff with. There's a default button or a set of presets. I'm going to ignore the presets. I did actually run through some of them and they're like, okay, fair enough. But we can go to init. Oh, okay, which provides us one of these. It's already got some points in. I don't like that, so I'm going to get rid of that. What we got? Up across the top does nothing. We've got presets. You can access a presets folder. Boring. You can actually change colors of things. Didn't touch it. You can change the UI scale up and down. This, as I said, actually moves the size of the knobs as well, as opposed to this, which just lets you leave everything at the same size. Cool. I did initially think that this that says scale, change that, and I wondered why nothing happened. We'll come back to that in a mo. And then, of course, you can save presets and all of that. So all of that. You've got the ability to A/B, so you can set up a curve and another curve, and you can say which sounds better against, obviously, the ability to bypass. You can copy between your A and your B and what have you. Maybe those things are useful. I don't really use them. But there are situations. There's one EQ, it's a rack extension, a graphic one, where you can actually morph between the A and the B positions. Occasionally I have used that. Honestly, I forget about that I even have the device. There is a bypass here. I kind of picked on Relief EQ for its odd bypass. I'm going to pick on this too for its odd bypass. Not in terms of function. It does exactly what you expect. It turns the device on and off. But in use, I several times hit the default button rather than the bypass. So let's have a look. Let's say we've got a world-beating cool EQ curve, and I go to hit bypass. Now, in theory, Control-Z should bring it back, but it doesn't. Control-Z does seem to work on some things, but not others. I couldn't work out the logic of it. Some situations it works, some it doesn't. Oh, and apparently you can do this, choose several dots and move them all at once. Yep, nice, all pretty standard stuff. So there is an issue there. FFT, fast Fourier transform. I'd love a fast Fourier transform. I know what it is, but I'm just going to say WTF is that. Well, actually, it's the picture. So again, it's a strange labeling thing. Dude, why don't you just call it spectrum or something? And I know you're trying to jam things in and make them small, but I don't know. I didn't love these. MIDI learn, didn't get into. Little dots, clear lock. I did not get into whatever they were, so leave it alone. What I did discover after trying to use this as a UI scaler was that this actually scales the... It's kind of a slightly strange place to put it, I think, because to me it belongs in the masters. But yes, that means that if you're working on something, you can say, I want more or less of this. And I guess if, like I said before, you were wanting to morph between one EQ curve and another, then you could set one as this and the other one as that, and fair enough. That's all right. You've got masters over here. We'll have them running. This one sets your input level. I didn't work out if there was an output level. I don't really use those things anyway, so it wasn't an odd one. But you can, I did find use for the pan thing, but you can actually minimize that and shunt it out of the way. I'm all for that. Because the different colouring, I think, is all related to ins and outs and what have you. I don't know. I don't really care because I'm not going to use those meters. Anyone I think who is using those meters is probably, well, that's up to them. Once we get into the middle, yes, you can create curves. You've got the ability to see what's going on. You can actually flip a curve. Initially, I was like, why would I? But I guess if you're doing the whole pan and scan thing... Ooh, I don't like that. That's bad. Now I can get rid of it. Okay, fair enough. I guess I can then go to, oops, not that one. Let's just put that back. I can then go to that and go, okay, no, let's do it this way. So in terms of a possible workflow thing, yeah, maybe that is actually a useful feature. It doesn't take much space, so I'm not going to argue with it. But there is a Sometimes that really can be handy if you're looking for a particular sound. The scan type situation where we're working for, let's just reset that. Double click will reset that. So if I go to here and I have this in solo. Oh. Am I only allowed to solo it for a period of time? Would need to RTFM on the rules for that. Didn't realize that had a set of rules. But there are situations in which you might say, okay, I'm not going to create a boost or a cut. I'm just going to scan, listening for the thing I can hear. So if I'm already hearing something and I don't know exactly where it is, then in theory, the solo thing would allow me to find it without doing the whole, oh look, there it is, kind of thing. But again, I don't believe the scan method is quite the way that people say that it should be. Oh, you go scanning, listening for bad things. You should be hearing or feeling what we'll call the bad thing, either what there's too much of or not enough of, and then it's just a case of finding it. And yes, scanning can be a great way of helping you find it. But if you're just going, where's the bad shit? It's all bad shit, and you end up with like this kind of stuff as your EQ curve. And that's a really, really bad sort of a thing to have happen. In terms of curves, it does the usual. In the middle offers you a bell, towards the side offers you a shelf, and at the edge offers you a cut. All pretty normal sort of stuff there. You can change a lot of these things in here. You can change them down here. So all of that's kind of fine. Oh, there's also a little, cut this little bit out. That shouldn't be used in normal mixing, but where you've got a problem, somebody sends you a guitar part and it's got a 60 hertz hum or something like that, or a 120 because they've got something wrong with another piece of equipment, then this allows you to sort of dig in and hack away at that. It is generally far better to use this kind of stuff, and this sort of stuff possibly even combined with a gate, than it is to get into using ozone or whatever to do magic shit, because magic shit sounds terrible. You listen, everyone else will listen to it and go, this sounds like distorted digital auto-tune shit, and that's not what they want. So anyway, you've got a good set of features there. Access to them is fairly good. There's also this panel up here. If you don't like where it is, you can move it, but only left, right. We'll have a little bit more on that one later. What was that supposed to be? A bell or something. You can control, obviously, your frequency, your gain, your slope. So this allows you to make flat top things. Why is that a little... It's a little... Okay. Oh, it's because I've got these other curves. Let me just kill that one because... Sorry, I was just confused because I've never seen it do that before, but that was just because it was reacting to the other thing. So you can make flat bands as well. There are reasons in which you might want to do them. You can use them a little like a high or low pass as well. If you make them nice and wide, you can do that sort of thing as well. So there are reasons you might want to do that, because notice how this you can go really aggressive without creating a whoop kind of in your curve, which you get. So the fact that they're there is nice. Your Q ranges can go quite big, quite small. The only thing that I have not seen this have is to change your Q, your width, based on how aggressive you get. So like the SSL EQ is designed that it'll be quite broad here, but as you raise, it will narrow itself down to a more surgical thing. That'd be a nice option. Maybe it's in here. As I said, I did not RTFM, but there doesn't seem to be a button for it. A lot of people wouldn't care or even understand it, but it is a thing that's nice if you can have it. So that's all of those. I think that's pretty well all the features. Oh, until we get to dynamic. Dynamic EQ is like a compressor driven just by this band. So if I turn dynamic on, we've got our gain set to 0. But as we have stuff happening, it gets rid of it. Let's try it right down here. So we can see it happening here with the bass, the bottom end. We might even go a bit square. That's a bit of an odd one. Most people would be like, just roll that off. But what if we don't really want to roll it off? What if we want to have some of that just free air happening, but we don't want it to intrude too much? Then we do what we do here and say, okay, why don't we just dynamicize it? You can change your attack and release. It's got very long attack times, which I think is nice. It goes to, well, incredibly short. 0 milliseconds is incredibly short. The only possible issue I have there is that the fine control may get a little difficult, but I didn't necessarily feel that in use. And again, out to 1,000 milliseconds, so it's a second. It'd be nice if it moved to a second rather than, but whatever. Again, it seems comfortable enough either way. Yes, you can fly in side chain stuff. Yes. You can have an automatic threshold, or in this case, I might say, okay, now I want to control my threshold. So as you see, I get a more intelligent use than the auto. That's a bizarre situation, but it was just because I've got a whole mix. I wanted to be able to show you something that was kind of unique. So that's all there. This I didn't really get into or understand, but there was something interesting. I found that in mix check, you've got some profiles which purport to be somewhat like a certain speaker. This would be the Horitone mix cube thing. And they move that to one side. So my mix in its full glory, assuming I had a Horitone. Panning to one side with the Horitone thing is actually a good thing because the Horitones were often used as a single point, as in one speaker, not stereo summed as mono. Okay, kind of cool. There were a few others. There's Japan NS, so that's obviously trying to be an NS10. Does it sound like one? I don't know. But here I think that's a bit messed up, that be panned to one side. Because NS10s, you had a pair of them. You even laid them sideways to get access to the... So putting it in mono is a little bit dumb. So mixing on my existing speakers, because that's what I'm hearing. And some sort of approximation of what an NS10 would sound like. Obviously not taking into account my speakers or ghastly headphones. I've shown that in a whole other video. There is value to be had in that. There was one which was a smartphone. Again, let's turn off the monoization thing. So does my mix work on a smartphone? Yeah. I lose the sub bass, but you lose the sub bass on everything. The fact that I can still be aware of the bass existing is fine. The bass is not very strong in this one. Anyway, it's all about the big glorious bright, wide strings. So that was an interesting thing, which you can do with any sort of thing. Obviously, they've put quite a lot of detail into this with lots of points. Is it good? Is it bad? I don't know. But it was interesting, and it shows a purpose for this. Mid-side stuff I'm not big into. I am finding myself using a little bit of mid-side in the top end of stuff, so I might do a bit of a boost there, and then another, no, not that. It annoys me, the let's choose for you thing, because half the time, or more than half the time, they choose wrong. So I might do a band like this, and then set that to sides. So that's boosting the sides, just to get this broader sort of a feel. So I do use mid-side, I just don't use it much past this, and I wouldn't really be upset if I didn't have access to it. So that's what that sort of stuff is for. That's basically, I think, the whole feature set of the device. Overall, relatively easy to use. Now, I will raise some issues that I encountered. As I said, I downloaded this, I installed it, I threw it straight into use, because that's how most people demo a thing, and I want to see, is this a contender for me? How do I feel about it? You sort of going, oh, but you're giving your personal opinions. Well, go demo it yourself. I'm giving you opinions as somebody who does this day every day. Just like with the Relief EQ, there's just this massive amount of space here below 20. And okay, fair enough, providing stuff above 20 may or may not be useful. But there's less space up here than there is down here. You know, the single largest frequency range on display is down here. So you go, okay, well, I'll put a point down here. It's at 12 hertz. 12 hertz. Find me a speaker anywhere that is reliably allowing us to work or let the listener hear at 12 hertz. So it doesn't make sense. It really would be about here was what we think we're doing, but in actual fact we're down there. Now, oh yeah, over time you're going to adjust and get used to that, but off the bat I found myself wasting time down here going, why is nothing happening? Because nothing is happening. We're just playing with ourselves for no gain whatsoever. We need to be up here. Now, there are situations, and I know everybody's bass obsessed, it's all about the bass. It's not. When you mix in sort of the middle. You mix from... let me show you. I've got a graphic for this, but let me show you here. You mix kind of like here. Everything outside of that, yeah, you manage, but if you're spending time with perfecting your mix here and or here, but particularly here, you need to get your hands out of your pants, because this is the bit that matters. And if you want proof of that, just rewind to the bit where I showed you the EQ curves here with the Nasty Speaker 10, where we roll off all the bass and it still sounds great. I loved NS10s, real ones. I'm not so sure about the clones or the HS series, because I've got what I've got. And we showed the smartphone, which is just like, that was like up here somewhere. A smartphone's range is somewhere in here, and it's not even flat. But the mix still works. So the proof is that you need to have your mix work here, and what you're doing down here is little more than hands down pants. So again, if you must have it, that's fine, but I would rather it be provided as an option, not a default, because it just... The other issue, which is related to this in terms of scaling, is that this defaults to a range that's pretty small. I can't remember what it is because I got rid of it. So you turn it on and you start doing EQ-y stuff. Oh, this is useless. Look at this. I'm at the top and nothing's happened. Why? because I've got a tiny range. If I come over here, oh, it's not as much. I found several EQs that when I started using them, it was like, this is like a Met EQ. It doesn't matter how much I jack things up, nothing happens. Is there some kind of weakness to this EQ? Yes, there is, because what I worked out with them all was that they've been set to these incredibly fine sort of gain curves. So we might drag up here and go, oh, look at that, I'm really adding an awful lot. Whereas if we even go to a gain of a curve of 12, it's like, well, that's not so much, dude. If we zoom right out to excitement territory, I assume that's about 40 dB. Let's test it. It doesn't let me go to 36, so it's probably about 40 dB. Then that 1%, this is what I expect. From using... I expect to make tiny moves and to make bold moves. And when you've got it set to, or stuck here, I make a bold move that, yes, a whole 3 dB. So I can understand that some people might want it that way, but setting it as a default, or not allowing people to easily move it and going, oh, well, you know how to do it easily, but every time I open an EQ, I have to go over here and do this. And it's not the only EQ that does this. But I did work out, because I thought TAL's normally good and lets you set a default. If you go in and create the default that you want, which is, in this case, this, I don't want that, I want this, then you go in and save your default there, overwrite that, and so now if I've got stuff happening and I hit default, see how it goes to what I want. So yes, it's an issue, but in terms of the level range thing, fixable. This one, I'd like a way to fix that. I'm not sure if there is. Oh, I just realized it tells you the note name as well. It doesn't make a big deal of it, doesn't have a piano display, but okay, fair enough. That is a useful bit of information. It's out of the way. Oh, it's there all the way through, but okay, that's fair enough. So that's two things that caused me a problem, one of which I could fix. This I don't love. As the bypass and default buttons are next to each other, as I said several times, we're wanting to bypass my curve to listen to AB. I hit the default and Control-Z did not bring it back. What Control-Z's done to my project, I have no idea at this point. So put your bypass button somewhere that's not right next to the default. Move it over here and use a convention in the corner. Calling it BIP is probably similarly the thing, because my brain doesn't understand what a BIP is. It's not really a word. Oh, hello, BIP. Would you like to go and have a BIP? Default is a word, so the brain might just go, that makes no sense, let's choose the one that makes sense. I don't know why, but I kept grabbing the wrong thing. And it's pretty common that a lot of things will have in one of the corners a default bypass switch or something or other. It annoyed me because I fell for it several times. Something that I miss is, and I raised this last time as well, and one of the reasons that I stick with Q range is that it has an overview. So when I've got several points here, people will go, oh, but there is your overview. Yes, that's one kind of way of seeing the overview, but the information down here is not giving me access to overview. There don't seem to be any more panes or panels or things that I can open up. If I highlight all of them, it lets me move them, which is cool, but it doesn't give me all the information across the overview, other than saying, that's your overview, buddy, like it or lump it. I did not love that. Plus, there's no way to order it. So again, let's say this is the first point that I put in, and then I put in one of that down there, and then I put one up here. That's band 3, and it's always band 3. That's band 2, which means this is band 1. Logically, this is the first band I see. This is the second band. That's the third band. Okay, maybe if I'm Arabic or Japanese or whatever, I'm going to say that's band 1, that's band 2, that's band 3. But I read from this direction because I'm white. It's a culture thing, but 1 is there. Okay, that's fine, but I've got no choice. I've got no way of renaming that, reordering that. And something I really like in Q range is, and I'll pop the picture up, the ability to have that list along the bottom of the bands, just be able to see which is used, which is not. Fair enough, in this case you've got, I don't know how many bands, maybe 99 or an infinite number of whatever, I don't know, it's probably there in the RTFM, but you got lots. And there's no way to then reorder and put them in a sensible order, they're just jumbled up. But other than Q range, I've not seen another one that really lets you reorder. I can't remember whether Clyde House or whatever it does. Kirchhoff allows you to reorder. I can't remember. I did like Kirchhoff. It's just, it was sort of feature overkill, but somehow managed to be done in a kind of a cool way. This is not an overkill. That's good. There's also messy feature access. I can access some features in several places, like here and here, but not here. There are some things like this I can only access here, or what range I'm working in, like what mode, stereo-ish mode I'm working in, I can only access here. So it's a little inconsistent. There seems to be space to put it here, so if this is my overall technical panel, why don't I have that there? And then I've got this thing floating up here. And it's like, well, you're covering some of the same features, but not some of the same features. I can move it, but I can only move it there. But I don't have the option to turn it off, as far as I'm aware. I didn't see a way to do that. Okay. So I found that a little, just a niggle. But when it comes to workflow, a niggle can be a killer. It just makes you unhappy when you're trying to do the job. Some people aren't going to care. Ultimately, I could get to a point where I don't care much, but I have some similar devices which I don't use because they just annoy me when I want to get on with the job, which is part of why the F2 window in Reason, you press it and you've got one of these with just the basic SSL bands there that you can drag around, and it's just a joy to use. And one of the things that I love is that change track and it just follows me. Let's turn it on so you can see. And I know that's very hard for a VST to do that. If I change let's go to a mixer view. Looking at my drums, it's there. Looking at my bass, it's there. Looking at my rhythm bus, it's there. See how it just follows me? You won't see any action on here because I obviously didn't do any of that because I did all the EQing with the TAL EQ. But having access to this EQ that I can set up and do stuff with, and that just follows whatever I select, it's just magic. It really is. Where was the one I changed? Oh, that one. We don't want to change that one because that's the one that shouldn't have anything on it at all. That is very difficult for a VST to do. But it is a factor in what gets used and what doesn't get used. There is also possibly a bug. It's an inconsistency, if nothing else. We'll get this guy out of the way and we'll turn this one on. I did some automation because I forgot to check an automation test on the other one. Moves around just fine. Sometimes it distorts, but that's not its fault. But watch here. When it comes over here, yes, when it comes over here, you see the display of its thing raise. I don't think it changes anything, but there's something weird that when it comes down here, I think it goes back to what it really should be showing and then moves when it's automating. Again, it's possible that's just happening in Reason. It doesn't seem to be changing the sound, but it's like, okay, that's not perfect. It's not a killer, but I did notice it, and it's a little intriguing, a little head-scratching. Don't know. All right, now, Comparing, obviously this is what people are going to do. So I'll think of what are some possible contenders. I'm not going to open them up in here. You can do that. You've got to work out what. So my question is going to be, why buy this over? So why buy this over TDR Nova? Nova, for most people, is free or is relatively cheap. The free version, obviously, you've only got a couple of bands, and that's it. It's all over Red Rover. The Gentleman's Edition is fairly priced. You get a couple more points, but you don't get 37,000 more stupidly, ridiculously coloured points. So in terms of why this would win over Nova, well, it's more colourful. And you can access an awful lot more points. In terms of, people are going to say, well, one sounds better than the other. No, they don't. They all sound the same. An EQ is an EQ is an EQ. They don't have magic built into them. Some claim they do. Some may have some kind of saturation built into them, but you know what? It's not really unique to them. This doesn't seem to talk about having any of that kind of stuff. It sounds dandy. It sounds pleasant. So why buy this over something like Kilohertz KHS Slice? I have that. Over on the side panel, you can open up a list of the dot points that you've got, like little modules down the side. It doesn't really solve my problem compared to, say, Q range. It does allow you to sort of dig in and focus, so rather than having it here, they're down the side and you can turn it off and what have you. It's not colourful like this, but it's very consistent with the Kilohertz thing. It's easy to use, it's pleasant, it's all dandy, it's got all the same sort of feature set. It doesn't have dynamic though, so TAL EQ has a clear advantage in being dynamic. It has a slighter disadvantage, depending upon the user, in that it's not part of a larger modular environment. So with Kilohertz, if you're using Snap Heap or Multipass, then their EQ fits in as part of that range. So you can use it as a little module inside their rack that you can then pop up and do hickory and fold it back in. That is a pretty strong feature if you are big in the Kilohertz modular environment thing. Sometimes I have used it, and it will actually get used when I come to process this, post-process this, in that it's in a preset for making Benedict sound better. So you're hearing it right now as I blah, blah, blah. And here's the big one. But why buy TAL EQ over FabFilter Pro version, wherever the hell they're at? This is cheaper, and that may get some people just because of that. The big draw to FabFilter is this Profulness mindset. This idea that FabFilter is more proful. They put pro in the name! It must be more proful. Look, this is only TAL EQ. It's not the TAL Pro EQ. Pro TAL's Pro EQ for pro people. There is a massive Profulness mindset, which I spoke about right from the beginning, that has permeated Dorville. It's a pox. FabFilter have taken advantage of that. They've traded on that. Now, nothing against the profulness of FabFilter's product. They are, I believe, proful in the sense that there's nothing wrong with them. But there's nothing wrong with this. As Dan Worrell has pointed out quite a few times, if you do comparisons, and he does compare things at quite the nitty-gritty level, if you compare, say, the EQ that's built into Reaper against, say, Pro EQ or Nova or what have you, they have some differences in how they play the game, in their technical approach, but they all sound the same. They're all doing the same thing. So unless there's something wrong with TAL's math, and I do not believe there is, because chances are he's just pulled a library, which is probably the same library that Re-EQ has pulled, and entirely possible the same library that FabFilter have pulled from as well. It's what everyone uses, these libraries. Then they all sound the same. So the Profulness mindset is hands down pants. So should you use Pro EQ over TAL EQ? I don't like FabFilter stuff. I've had access to it. I've reviewed it. I may even have some licenses so that I probably could be using at least some of the FabFilter products. I just don't dig them. Not because they're unquality-like, but they just don't work with my workflow. And that's the important thing. Profulness is not anything. It comes down to a personal workflow. A lot of people force themselves into the pro tool because it's pro, and they give themselves the impression they're being more proful. Interesting question is, go and have a look at their output. How much output do they have? How good is that output as art? Interestingly enough, more often than not, there's very little output, and often it's very, very flawed. So having gone to the proful option, for which they don't know how to use and struggle with, they haven't actually achieved what they thought they were achieving by getting the proful thing. So in terms of, is this more pro or less pro than FabFilter, it's exactly the same. It just comes down to workflow. And if people that you know, just like with people that I know who want to be anti-reason cringe, want to be TAL cringe, tell them to fuck off, because they have no idea what they're talking about. So discount them as much as they're trying to discount you, or even better, discount them way more than they're trying to discount you, because they're not worth shit. So why would you buy it over any of them? You like the colours of this, the price is the same or better than, and it does everything you need. Why would I not get this? As I say, there are a few little niggles that would make it less than the workflow that I look for. If this was what came with as there and it was just there, would I use it? Yeah, I guess so. If Q range ceased to exist, became non-functional, would I go to this? Sure, why not? It gives me access to dynamic that Q range does not. But would I use it over the this F2 window? Hell no, because it doesn't have the ability to follow what I'm doing. And I would use this kind of EQ for like instrument aggressive hack and slash, and I would still be using the F2 window for my more subtle mix changes. There we go. So I would be using this sort of thing in that situation. So as we see, okay, what have we got? We've got an 18 dB boost. Actually, no, we can go to 20 on this, but it shows 36 as it's. So I'm used to 36. So it means that when I make a move like this, I know that's going to be sort of about a 1 to 2 dB. So when I go and make this kind of move in something else, nothing happens. Obviously, that's why I get a little bit like WTF about it. So why would you buy one over another? Find which fits your workflow, and the best way of doing that is not spending hours with it, but dropping it straight into a mix and going to town, doing your mix. If your mix flows really easily, it's like, oh, that's nice because that's the one for you. If not, if you're fighting with things, if you're hitting the default button rather than the bypass button, or you go Control-Z and nothing happens, it's not the one for you. So my bottom line thoughts are it's mostly pretty easy to use, especially if you compare to ZL EQ, which I talked about last time, but ZL EQ is free. There are some workflow issues, which we've talked about before, but that comes down to a personal choice. I've solved this dB range issue, which again, I say that's a pretty common thing. It's took me ages to work out. That's why I didn't love Nova, because Nova felt weak. It had weak kung fu, and I had exactly the same with the kilohertz slice. I was like, weak kung fu, dudes. And then I realized, okay, but I haven't worked out with that one at least how to set it to default to a 36 dB range, which I can with this by saving a default preset. On your TAL, you solved a problem that puts you ahead of Slice in that sense. I don't know what it's like with FabFilter, whether you can set that range or not. I'd be horrified if you can't for all their profulness. So conclusion, it's a good EQ, if not a little bit same. I haven't encountered anything in here that makes me go, oh, that's kind of cool, as I did with the Kirchhoff EQ. It's like, this one has a character of its own. It's a unique approach to this. This is a little same. But I guess they're probably going to chase the people who are wanting the profulness of a fab filter device but not wanting to part with the coin. This is a cheaper proposition. Go have a look at the price, compare them both. I've got Aussie dollars, which is about $81, $82. So it'd be less than that for US dollars, but work it out yourself. Go compare the two. But downside is that it doesn't come with a uniqueness of workflow, a uniqueness of feature. It doesn't come with anything that makes it stand out to be more than any other thing. So if you don't have an EQ, if your DAW doesn't come with a nice default EQ that allows you to access this kind of stuff, then yeah, by all means. But if you've got Reaper and you can live with Re-EQ, then you don't need this. This is not more profulness in sound. It is a lot easier to use than Re-EQ. So you're paying for the workflow. And if that's letting you get to where you need to get to faster and easier without struggling with your horrible little windows and dots and what have you, then go do it. Bottom line, it is going to be a personal choice because there's no killer feature, but there's no absolute killer either. So it's unfortunately, I have to be a little bland and say it suffers from Me Tooism in the sense that it just doesn't seem to have hit any spot enough to say, bugger me, that is cool. As I say, the Kirchhoff, there was something about that was like, bugger me, that's cool. And I did hope to get a license. I didn't. Whether I would have continued using it in the real world, I don't know. But as I'm using it, it's like, this is a very interesting tool. It's an engaging tool. This is a cute tool. Cute sounds like an unpleasant word. I'm not demeaning it. It is pleasant. But there are some little downsides without corresponding positives. Q range is a bit out of date. There are some bugs. I don't think I can run the VST3 version. I think a few people can't run the VST3 version, and there doesn't seem to be any fix coming for that. So I know that sooner or later it's a bit weird in its automation when you go to automate it. The code inside, when you've got the screen closed, works. The automation all behaves, but when you've got the screen open, it glitches and leaps and what have you. It doesn't have dynamic. So there are some problems with that. But bearing in mind its price and the killer features that it does have of this down the bottom, having me be able to see and turn bands on and off really easily and arrange them in a logical order, that's to me is the killer feature of Q range. Plus it sounds really good. I don't know that it sounds any better or worse than anything else, but because it works easily, it sounds really good. So that's really my bottom line. You've got to say, does this provide something that my existing solution does not have? If it does, try it out, see if it fits your workflow. If it doesn't fit your workflow, it's not for you. Stay with what you've got until somebody comes up with the killer feature or arrangement of features that you step straight into it and go, oh, I'm there, I'm home, throw away all my other EQs because they waste my time. All right. If you want a hand with anything, my contact details below. If I have added value to your day, then my Ko-fi account, which is down below as well, go over there, sling me some coins, because it takes hours to do these, not to mention the decades of experience that allows me to do these. Get out there. You have a good day.